This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, another fantastic program with a super fantastic guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember we're a fan-generated program still under shadow banning by the deep state, and it's quite vicious shadow banning. So please do us a favor. Go to YouTube and Rumble, our channel there, the Glazov Gang, and subscribe and hit instant notifications. I just want to say that one more time. Please go to YouTube and Rumble and subscribe to our channels there and press instant notifications. Make sure to go to jamieglazov.com. Check us out there. Subscribe to our newsletter. And it's very important to hit the donate button and then be in a very generous mood. Follow us at Jamie Glazov on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Most importantly, go to liveuptofreedom.com and support the wonderful freedom fighter, Annie Cyrus. It is an honor and a privilege to have with us tonight, backed by popular demand, the one and only Daniel Greenfield, the CEO of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, the editor of the blog The Point at FrontPageMag.com, and he is the author of his new book, Domestic Enemies: The Founding Fathers' Fight Against the Left. Daniel, what an honor to have you here.
As always, it's an honor. It's an even bigger honor when I'm told that it's by popular demand. That's so much better than unpopular demand.
Fantastic. Annie, are you excited that Daniel is our guest this evening?
Yes, I'm actually planning to take over your position and just ask all the questions myself.
We can make that work.
Yeah. More and more, I always feel that I'm not needed or wanted. So that's a good idea. Annie, why don't you start with the first question?
Well, before I ask the first question, let me mention this. You may not be needed, but you're always wanted, which is much better than being needed. None of us would be here without you, Jamie.
Okay.
None of us could continue without you, so you're very much needed and wanted.
It's sort of like on the Bronx Tale, that it's better to be feared than loved. I think that's what Sonny said. But anyway, that's another matter. Go ahead, Annie.
Sure. So I'm actually very curious to ask the first question of what am I looking at behind you, Daniel? Election jihad. That is very curious.
Well, even before Mamdani was making the headlines, the David Horowitz Freedom Center had a report out, Election Jihad. It profiled the various Islamist politicians running for office across the United States in places you would not expect. For example, about 20% of the Georgia Democrat Senate delegation is Muslim. And we broke down some of their support for terrorism, including in Israel, in the United States, and we're going to be doing a second part before long, Election Jihad too.
Fantastic. And this is, to our lovely audience, this is exactly why you need to be subscribing to the website, because you find information way ahead of anybody else. Most of the time, you actually see anybody else copying what Front Page is putting out. So here's your call to action. Go to Front Page Mag, subscribe, become a paid member, because you find even more behind the paywall. Okay, now talking about the election jihad, I want to ask you about what I call the hijacking of law and order. So on September 4th, Dearborn, Michigan Police Department released their brand new police patch, which made history. The very first police patch in the United States of America's history with any other language except English, and surprisingly, it is in Arabic. Well, of course, the person who designed it, the officer who designed it, claims honoring and reflecting on diversity in our community, and also the police department is making it optional today. Where do you think that's going to go, Daniel?
When I saw those uniforms, it reminded me of the Iraqi police uniforms after we liberated Iraq. The question these days is who is occupying whom, and the answer is pretty obvious. You know, this is Sharia supremacism. They may dress it up as cultural diversity, but there's only one language on there. It's not, 50 languages. Now we're going to have patches in Chinese and Tagalog and Finnish and Polish and Russian and every other language on earth. No, it's we're going to have it in Arabic, and at some point they'll drop the English and it'll just be Arabic because there's a reason they call it Dearborn, Dearbornistan. It's uh, absolutely under enemy occupation, ironically enough, again by Iraqis in many cases. We brought some of these people back during the first Bush administration because Saddam Hussein, of course, was so mean, and we should have actually liberated Iraq back then, but we didn't. So to make up for it, we brought a bunch of these Shiites to America. They've now occupied Dearborn, formerly a working class American town. You can see them doing Shiite jihadi parades, celebrations of Hezbollah, and all that other stuff, and plans for, one day turn all of America into Dearbornistan.
Exactly. And for many years, all three of us have been saying or referring to verses of Quran and Hadith and reliance of the traveler. What comes to mind, as I believe, is Quran 47:35. Do not call for peace when you are majority in numbers. And we all know that proof is on the paper, where it's pretty much the area is 40% Muslim, the surrounding area is 55% Muslims, which is technically majority in voice and crowd. So do you think it's safe to say that Michigan is officially under dictation of Sharia, officially conquered?
As far as the politicians go, people like Governor Gretchen Whitmer, whose friends include a lot of Shiite Islamists, absolutely. They actually control the levers of power, and it doesn't take that many. What we're seeing, for example, the New York City mayoral election is you actually had about 5% of New Yorkers came out and voted in the primary that made Mamdani the Democratic mayoral nominee. And Muslims are about 3% or so of New York City. So, if you have 3%, you can get the 5%, you can actually make your own mayor. As long as everybody else is fighting each other, as long as there's confusion, which of course was the case in New York City. So if there's apathy, if different factions are fighting other factions, and Islam is very good, it's always thrived based on divide and conquer, based on making various groups fight each other, then you can actually take over even with 3%.
Bingo, divide and conquer. Fellow Americans, pay attention to every word Daniel is saying. Divide and conquer. Stop fighting each other over things that could be fought over later when we take our country back. All yours, Jamie.
Annie, thank you so much for those very vital and profound questions and comments. Quite a time we're living in. A couple weeks ago when I went to Mass, there was somebody that looked like the member of the Religion of Peace that walked in, and he was acting very weird at the back of the church and was saying some weird things to some people there. Then that trans shooting happened in Minneapolis. Then last Mass that I went to, all the doors are locked. I thought, was it canceled? But I hear them inside. So I walk around. There's only one door you can get in through the side. Security is there checking kind of people as they're, not physically checking, but just kind of looking at us as we're walking in. And then while I'm in the church, I'm kind of thinking about where can I run if the shooting starts. What a world we're living in now. And this is not Syria. This is not Iraq. This is the United States of America, and quite a time we're in. And we know that the synagogues also are not safe. Wonder if the Muslims in the mosques are worried that Orthodox Jews or Christians are going to come in and start shooting. I wonder. Which gets me to this, Daniel, you always have brilliant blogs and articles everywhere, and especially at Front Page and On the Point. Recently, you've written a blog on two Christians with machine guns that were arrested at a Muslim festival. Oh, whoops, very easy mistake to make. Sorry about that. Two Muslims with machine guns were arrested at a Christian festival of 40,000 in Italy. But, reading the Quran and the New Testament, it's the same message, right? Well, enough of my attempt at sarcasm. Daniel, what were those two Muslims up to with those machine guns? Did the police figure out a motive yet?
Oh, no. I mean, their authorities are searching for the motive. It's a mystery, of course. It's always a mystery. Muslim went around stabbing five people in Marseille in France. He shouted Allah Akbar verses from the Quran. They think it might be mental illness. They're still exploring the motive. It's, you've had nail bombs at Christmas markets in Europe. They're still searching for the motive. You never know. It can be all sorts of things. In other words, a Muslim pushed an elderly Jewish woman out of a window in France while also shouting Allah Akbar, and decided that he had mental illness caused by marijuana use. So there's a huge outbreak of mental illness in the Muslim community. I hear Osama bin Laden was on Prozac. You never know. So there's really no Muslim terrorism. It's just this big, big problem of psychiatric difficulties, and we just think it's Muslim terrorism because we're Islamophobes.
It's just the extremists, Daniel. It's not all. It's not all the Muslims, and it's got nothing to do with Surah 9:5 that says slay the unbelievers wherever you find them. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just interesting, this willful blindness. I myself don't think that the West will ever wake up. It's too. The leftist belief system, this utopian belief system, it's so strong. I think people would rather get beheaded than name what the religion of peace really is. Speaking of the religion of peace, Ilhan Omar, you've written another fascinating blog on her recently, and the title is Ilhan Omar Net Worth Soars to 30 million, backed by 60 billion in assets and ex-Qatari lobbyist. How does somebody in Congress or the House of Representatives, Senate, whatever it is, how do you accumulate $30 million?
Well, members of Congress are public servants. They're giving up a lot. You could just think about all the incredible careers Ilhan Omar could be engaged in if she wasn't just wasting her time in Congress collecting her, low six figures. I'm sure she could be making millions as, the stewardess or something, except no airline would probably hire her. But instead she sacrificed a lot to become a politician, spent her life in politics, and then she cheated on her husband. This should not be confused with her brother. This is an understandable mistake because in the past she has allegedly married her brother. This is not her brother that she's married to. So she was married to her husband, and she cheated on her husband with her white campaign advisor who loved her so much that he converted to Islam for her, and he broke up his marriage and broke up her marriage. And now they've got a great thing going on because he's a campaign strategist who also runs some sort of international venture capital firm with investments out of Africa. And they've got a former U.S. ambassador to Bahrain, and they've got a former Qatari lobbyist, and lots of great guys involved in this. And somehow, their net worth has soared massively to the point that they're claiming that they're backed by 60 billion in assets, and net worth has shot up to 30 million, and a tripling in thousands of percents in just 1 year, which is a pretty incredible accomplishment. And also quite fascinatingly, they were sued by a business partner who said that they promised to triple his investment, which is the kind of claim that very shady people in television commercials and crypto scammers make. It's not normally the claim that's made by a member of Congress. Now, also, fun fact, this firm that her husband was running claimed to be able to structure legislation, which is pretty impressive because nobody outside of Congress is supposed to structure legislation. Now, could Ilhan Omar have been structuring legislation for pay? That would be Islamophobic, so we shouldn't go there. It's probably mental illness.
Yeah, but the word Qatar keeps popping up a lot recently. And I think that, how could one say, I think the Islamic world is having more and more of an influence over the people who tell us the news, including some figures on the right that have surprisingly or unsurprisingly become Jew haters or are engaging in Jew hate, right?
Yeah, well, Qatar has discovered that they can just buy up our elites and that they're very cheap at the price also. I remember when Prince Charles, before he became the king, got caught with a suitcase of money, and I mean actual cash money from Qatar, and he tried to explain that it was for a nonprofit. That's the kind of people you're dealing with here. And of course, they're very happy to buy a lot of these social media influencers on the right and people who used to have shows on Fox and elsewhere. And now these people are, pushing Islamic propaganda nonstop. Those guy like Stephen Bannon, who used to hate China, used to hate all sorts of foreign lobbyists, used to hate George Soros, has Trita Parsi on, and Trita Parsi is the founder of the Iran lobby. He currently works for a project funded by George Soros, and he has him on to discuss how terrible Israel is and how horrible, horrible, horrible Israel is. Which there are people who feel that way who are Americans, who are genuinely Americans, but a whole lot of this messaging is coming from the people who are hating Israel not because they care about America, but because they have an Islamic agenda, and that's what we tend to hear over and over again. When Tucker Carlson spends half his time in the Gulf and he talks about how excited he is to be going to Saudi Arabia for a real estate conference there because, apparently you need to go to a Saudi real estate conference. He talks about how excited he is because, according to Tucker, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf are the future. They're the future. They're not medieval Islamist backward dictatorships that oppress women and treat Christians as third or fourth class citizens. No, they're the future. And you know what kind of people think of the Muslim world of Saudi Arabia as the future? Well, people who are employed by them.
Very, very disturbing. I don't know if I should hold my breath waiting for Candace and Tucker to do a show on Muslim rape gangs and what they're inspired by out of their own words. And, maybe invite you, Robert Spencer, David Wood, Annie Cyrus on just to talk a little bit about Islamic theology and what it says about rape and sex slaves in Islam. I'm not going to hold my breath, but there's definitely some kind of Stockholm syndrome going on. Daniel, in terms of Ilhan Omar married to her brother, or she did marry her brother, I'm sorry, I don't mean to have a dirty mind here, and I'm only asking questions. If she was married to her brother, did she have intimate relations with her brother? Or was it just for a visa? Or whatever it was. I don't know. The reason I'm asking is over the years, I've done a lot of research into incest in the Muslim world. And yes, it's very Islamophobic to study that, but it's actually horrifying. In England, what the Pakistanis are doing, the cousins are marrying, etc., etc. There's so many psychological and physical disabilities in that world, the Muslim world, because of that. And again, nobody's talking about that. It's Islamophobic to say it, but that's why I'm just asking questions. As a reporter and journalist, have you dug into this marriage between Ilhan Omar and her brother?
Well, it kind of began with Muhammad, the perfect man, the prophet of Islam. Unlike Jewish, Christian, really the religious founders, figures in any other major religion, Muhammad was renowned for one thing, which was that he could not control his sexual appetites, to the point at one point Islamic teachings say that Allah rushes to fulfill Muhammad's sexual desires, which, kind of interesting arrangement there. Anyway, at one point, Muhammad decides that he wants his son's wife. It's his adopted son's wife, and he really wants her. So, he gets to have her, but he has to create some Islamic rationalization for this bit of incest. So he declares, and Muslims still believe this to this day, that adoption is illegitimate because, Muhammad needed to have sex with his adopted son's wife. So this is really the paragon of Islam. So what do you really expect from Ilhan Omar or Tariq Ramadan, who's been meshed in a massive scandal involving sexual abuse of multiple women? He's the big Muslim Brotherhood figure in Europe. But Ilhan Omar's family tree is about as tangled as the Borgias, so it's kind of complicated. To what extent is this immigration fraud? To what extent is she even who she says she is? To what extent was this whole entire convoluted mess a case where her family were illegally trying to fool the United States government? To what extent is this a really person who is, even apart from all the jihad stuff, really has absolutely no self-control. And we see this. Her father disowns her on his deathbed because she cheats on her husband with, the guy she's married to right now. And then, she decides to break up his marriage and her marriage. This is behavior of somebody with very poor self-control. The financial stuff that's going on, these revelations, again, this is stuff being done by somebody with very poor self-control. And this is something you tend to see in Islam. They treat suicide bombing, various acts of brutality and terror as this proof of their religious faith. No, it's behavior of people, again, with very poor impulse control. And this is something we see in criminals in the United States. Criminals tend to have very poor self-control. What they want to do, they do. They go ahead and they do this. And this is really what distinguishes civilized people from savages.
Daniel, just a sec. I'm not sure if I'm having a mental lapse here. The background of Ilhan Omar is Somalia, right?
Yes.
Okay. If she was in Somalia doing these things, do you think she might run into a little bit of trouble with Sharia law?
Well, that's a question. There are people in the Somali community who have issues with her, and not, because she's a traitor and hates America, but because of the whole sexual stuff. So within Islam, there's a certain low comfort level with female leadership anyway, and top that off with her shenanigans. And there are people in the Somali community who definitely would like to get rid of her. So far, they've had no luck because she has a bunch of support from the left.
Annie, you're an expert on this on multiple levels in terms of all this dysfunction and pathology in Islam and what they teach. What do you think about this whole Ilhan Omar thing, how rich she is, marrying her brother, then cheating on her husband? What do you make of all this?
You said it perfectly. Dysfunctional. Yes, it is very dysfunctional. And if you are a Muslim who was born a Muslim, raised a Muslim in an Islamic country, as a girl, which you become a woman at age 9. So as a woman, you do always struggle with the dysfunctionality of it. Either you believe the lies or not, either way, you're always struggling with the dysfunction. Now, coming to Ilhan Omar, I 100% agree with Danny. I strongly believe even if Ilhan was not Somalian, even if she was of some American background, she would still be a socialist, leftist, probably supporting LGBTQ, especially the MAP, minor attracted people, because her mentality is of deceive and corruption. You see that in her talks. You feel it in her behavior and body language. But going back, one thing I can guarantee is if she did what she did in Somalia of cheating on her husband, without a doubt, that husband who was cheated on could take out a stoning on her and bury her up to her chest and stone her. That is a guaranteed punishment. The father, instead of disowning her, could have stoned her. But she walks around. It's interesting you're talking about this, not to self-promote, but I'm actually working on a project that is, the title of it literally is PR Queens of Islam. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sarsour, and the rest of them, they know exactly what Sharia says. But they hide behind our protection of our constitution here in America to promote a bunch of lies about what it means to be a woman under Sharia. She knows very well what would happen to her if she even tries to travel to Somalia. But she stands here and say, I'm here in US Congress representing Somalians. And Americans don't tend to be bothered by that.
Sounds like some kind of suicidal death wish. Oh, wait, that's what the left is. And also the belief in Islam, and very profound once again, Annie. Daniel, your response to Annie's wisdom?
Oh, absolutely. It is interesting because these people obviously are hiding indeed behind behind the fact that in America, yes, it's quite comfortable for women to be leaders, whereas in the Muslim world, you don't see that much female leadership. So they're here, they're subverting us, but at the same time, they're exploiting the American system to actually have freedoms that they would not have in the Muslim world. And yes, Ilhan Omar was just an ordinary girl growing up somewhere in Somalia and she did half this stuff, she'd be dead. Her father would honor kill her off the bat. This would be common throughout much of the Muslim world. And yet here, of course, yes, she enjoys this kind of protection. So does Rashida Tlaib. So a bunch of these people who are out there making the case for Islam in the United States. At the same time, they're benefiting from the United States. They're benefiting from not having to live the way that they would actually under Sharia. Nobody's putting them in the burqa the way that they would, for example, in Afghanistan. They're not being forced to really do anything, and yet they're trying to destroy the United States in favor of this system that would enslave them. But, that is actually what the left does. So why should it be so different?
Well, thank you, Annie and Daniel. I think we're all dedicated to understanding this. Since the time I was a kid, and I always used to ask my dad, why do these people support a system and regime where they would be exterminated within 30 seconds? And I dedicated my life to trying to understand that. And even till now, you've got certain leftist feminists that are, supporting Hamas and etc. And throughout the years and decades, we know that they go to areas of the Middle East and then just get raped and killed. And some kind of death wish there. And if anybody's interested, I've written a book, United in Hate, trying to understand this.
It's a great book.
You know what? We should just stop the show right now and just let you keep going on that. And but no, I appreciate that, Daniel. I think it's very timely right now because we really see that right now. Just the more Hamas kills, the more euphoric the left becomes. And these demonstrators in the West, we know that they would get raped and killed and massacred and mutilated within 30 seconds of contact with this entity. It's a fascinating topic. I've dedicated my life to trying to understand it. And I know you have too, Daniel and Annie. Well, let's try to understand this. He is a British comedy writer, Graham Linehan, and he got off the plane in the UK the other day, and the UK police are there to arrest him because he supported the Muslim rape gangs. Oh no, wait, he supported Hamas. Oh wait, that's allowed. Supporting Muslim rape gangs, that's allowed. He supported ISIS. Oh no, that's allowed. Oh wait, he made some tweets on X against transgender. Yeah, things are very interesting in the UK, aren't they, Daniel? You get arrested now for tweets on X criticizing the transgender agenda. But if you support Muslim rape gangs or Hamas and October 7th, I guess you get coffee and donuts delivered to your house. What's going on there?
My favorite one of these stories, and by the way, there are mass arrests. There are thousands of people in the UK have been arrested for speech. I actually wrote an article for Front Page Magazine not that long ago, which showed that there were more people arrested for free speech in the UK than there were in Cuba. The UK at this point is full Orwell. But my favorite story from one of these speech arrests.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Daniel. I don't even think Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller are even allowed in the UK. But if you or Annie or I travel to UK, is there a chance that the police might be waiting for us at the airport?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, cancel the trip to UK immediately. Thank you. But that's actually scary, isn't it?
Yeah, if we were to announce, I'm going to go to the UK next week, and one of the people who's monitoring my account, who's British citizen, actually files a complaint with the police about something I wrote, I could very well face the same situation. Anyway, as I was saying,
sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No. One of my favorite stories about the UK and this double standard, the two-tier policing, is that there was a man who joined one of these anti-Israel rallies, but he was a bit eccentric, so he had a sign up that condemned Israel and condemned Hamas. You'd figure splitting the difference is good enough. None of these guys who are supporting Hamas at the rally get arrested. However, they complain to the police, and the police arrest this guy because half his sign condemns Hamas. So, and this was, a leftist, but he wanted, to be fair. So he's also going to have a sign condemning Hamas, and they arrest him not for the anti-Israel, obviously, but for the anti-Hamas one. And then the police says, officer tells him, this is a hate crime. You're provoking these people. You're making statements offensive to Muslims, which is true. Condemning Hamas and Islamic terrorism is offensive to Muslims. Anyway, Graham Linehan is, he might not mean that much to a lot of Americans, but this was the guy who co-created Father Ted, Black Books, It Crowd. He created a lot of British sitcoms that are popular. So he's very well known. This is not quite J.K. Rowling, but it's up there. This is a guy who was beloved. Then he wrote an episode of the It Crowd, which was accused of being transphobic. He was canceled. Not the show was canceled, he was canceled. His career was destroyed at this point. He was accused of transphobia, and he decided to fight back. So he's been tweeting condemnations of the whole movement and the whole corrupt thing. And really, after his arrest, he put on a sandwich board with the colors of the transgender flag, and he goes to the court because they banned him from being on Twitter. He goes to the court with a sign that says there is no such thing as a transgender child. Anyway, he's coming to the UK from America. He describes how he gets off the plane. There are 5 armed officers waiting for him. They escort him. They start demanding information about these tweets, and they issue an order banning him from Twitter, and he has to go to another interview. And again, this is routine in the UK, where speech is monitored on a massive level. When the Muslim terrorist stabbed 3 little girls to death, I mean, he stabbed a number of girls, but he stabbed 3 little girls to death at a dance studio, and people were very outraged about it, and they went into the streets and protested. The government's media insisted aloud that he was not a Muslim. They arrested people who merely tweeted that he was a Muslim for engaging in disinformation. They basically engaged in martial law. They just arrested anybody who was out there either tweeting or protesting or doing anything. Then months later, it came out he was in fact a Muslim. The government had been lying. And of course, there were absolutely no consequences for the government. There were plenty of consequences for the people who were arrested. Once again, now we have a Muslim pedophile attack on a child in the UK by one of these migrants. And there's this mass migration happening in the UK where Afghans and Pakistanis are coming in these little boats across, and they get put up in migrant hotels. And again, some people came out and protested, including children. The UK police came out and arrested the children. So I've said at this point, there's a much better case for the United States going in and liberating the UK than there was for liberating Iraq.
Yeah. There was this one incident that represents 1 million incidents in the UK. The Muslim rape gangs who were raping this girl. The father showed up to defend her, and the police arrest the father. But I think, Daniel, in your Torah and as Christians, that is our foundation, and also in our New Testament, we share something that before the redemption and the Messiah comes back, in our belief system, he comes back. In your Mashiach comes through as a human here, that it's going to get very dark, and then the redemption comes. And I think it's going to get very dark, right, Daniel?
There has to be a great deal of darkness before the light. And we understand really that God wants there to be this final conflict of the forces of evil destroyed. And the world has to see that the side of evil, that the side of darkness has to be completely discredited. Otherwise, this entire situation will continue on and on and on. So there has to be a moment when it seems like the forces of darkness are absolutely triumphant. We see this in various prophecies, that there's a point at which people feel there is no escape, there is no hope, evil has completely and entirely won. It shows its face in a way that it hasn't even done in the darkest days of the 20th century or the various human sacrifice cults. And at that point, we actually see the hand of God. So, there are some dark times perhaps ahead, but at the same time, this is an opportunity for God to show his light in the world.
Amen. Well, everything is all right. Like if we say that, excuse me, I know this show is family show, but just if we say that a woman cannot have a penis and a man cannot have a vagina, if this is not whispered, you might be going to jail very soon. And you already are going to jail in places like the UK. I don't know, is it just a matter of time here in the States? I mean, Thank God Trump won. So we got a brief reprieve on a few levels. But this Islamic also infiltration and the leftist power is escalating on various layers. But people on our side are also traitors and have this Munchausen syndrome by proxy, Stockholm syndrome, all kinds of stuff. It includes Orthodox rabbis. You're an expert on this, Daniel. You wrote a fascinating, shocking, well, okay, not really shocking for those of us that know what's going on, but highly disturbing article on the fake Orthodox rabbis for Hamas. Now, these are an interesting group of people. Tell us about them.
Well, the thing to understand is the left gets into everywhere or does its absolute best to get into everywhere. If it can't get inside, then it fakes that it is on the inside. So the left always wants to claim on the authority of something else. There's somebody who observed that they want to kill an institution, wear its skin as a suit for respect. So they get into every religion because the left is ultimately a cult. And this was a case where they were really trying, they got all these various leftist activists from non-religious movements who claimed to be rabbis and got them to sign letters. But they still weren't getting any Orthodox rabbis. So they compensated by, a while back, they created a movement that is not actually Orthodox, that claims to be Orthodox. It calls itself Open Orthodoxy. Now, for those people who are not Jewish or not really aware of religion so much, Orthodox Judaism basically is traditional Judaism. It believes in the literal truth of the Torah, the Bible, and God's will. It doesn't actually believe in any of the liberal stuff, which means none of the sexual identity politics that have consumed so many other religious movements. It is not dedicated to saving the planet, saving the whales, and all the fighting racism and all the other liberal garbage. Basically, that the left has turned pretty much a whole lot of major religions into, to the point where people complain within Christianity, within Judaism, that they go to their temple, they go to the church, and all they hear about is Trump is terrible, we need to save the planet. So Orthodox Judaism was relatively immune to that. They created a movement called Open Orthodoxy, which is not Orthodoxy, because if you attach something else to it, it's not it. They created their own seminary, and they began ordaining rabbis, and they began ordaining women as rabbis, which Orthodox Judaism does not do. They began ordaining gay people, which Orthodox Judaism so does not do. So for the most part, it's these people who also then created a social justice movement, one that attacks Israel, one, of course, that spends a lot of time advocating for the left. So they got a bunch of their people to sign on to this letter attacking Israel. And they got some people who were legitimately Orthodox rabbis, and they got some people who are just freak shows to sign onto this letter. And of course, the New York Times reported, finally Orthodox Jewish rabbis are attacking Israel also. And they create this permission structure. They create this manufactured illusion of a consensus, which is what they do all the time. And whether it's global warming, whether it's foreign policy, they create a manufactured consensus by bringing together these so-called people who are leftist activists, but posture as being members of various groups. Scientists, we've seen during the pandemic, doctors, professors of one kind or another. And of course, clergy, they love the idea of having their leftist activists posture as priests, as rabbis, because they want to appropriate the moral authority, the religious authority. But all these people are doing is serving the left. And you can easily tell because they don't actually have any content beyond the left. And this is where you can easily, whatever your religious denomination or whether you're not religious at all, you can easily spot somebody who is a leftist activist who is masquerading as a religious leader, as an expert, as something else, because they never deviate from the positions of the left. And they never have any content other than the left. So when I began looking at some of the sermons, some of the stuff that these so-called rabbis are writing, I mean, it's the stuff you would hear on NPR. There's no religion there. There's nothing else there but the left. And this is really where the left is really a kind of creepy zombie pod people phenomenon. It's like they take somebody, they overwrite their brains. The only thing this person does is now repeat back what the left says. And I like to think that on the conservative side, there's actual diversity, intellectual diversity. You hear different opinions, and you don't just hear the same party line over and over again. And you have sincere religious leaders. Those religious leaders are not constantly talking about politics. In some cases, they need to take a position on politics. But for the most part, they're actually talking about religion. They're talking about our relationship with God. They're talking about what God wants from us and what we are meant to do in the world. And with these people, it's just NPR nonstop.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Kenneth Levin wrote this fascinating book, The Oslo Syndrome. It's just fascinating. It's so the leftist Jews that had it and continue to have it. And it's what I've studied my whole life, the desire to shed oneself of one's own unwanted self. And so the fellow travelers that went to worship communism in Stalin's Russia and Maoist China, in North Vietnam, in Castro's Cuba, and then many of them, their friends disappear, their friends get killed there, and they don't even inquire, ask about them. Many of them also end up getting killed. A suicidal journey. But there's this thing with these leftist Jews too. It's this thing, well, those are the bad Jews over there. I'm the good one. I'm not like those Jews over there. Let me give you some money. Let me give you Gaza. Let me give you a few hugs. Kenneth Levin has documented this, that despite all of the evidence that you see that these people are going to kill you, the behavior of communities under siege, what you tell yourself, how you might be able to survive. That's if you even want to survive. But yeah, these Orthodox rabbis for Hamas, they're trying to shed themselves of something. And deep down, do they want to die? Or are they just trying to survive temporarily? I'm very interested. It's fascinating. I've been very interested in recent years when you look at these Hollywood stars. All their kids are trans. And so there's a lot that can be said there. Some say that it's the people that control them, they have to sacrifice their kids. It's a humiliation ritual, all kinds of stuff, right? But some psychologists and sociologists and experts also say that it's a de-whiting. The white stars that do it, because it's the white guilt, and it's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I'm guilty. Wait a minute, I have a trans son. And I get to de-white myself. I'm not white anymore. I'm not guilty anymore because I have a trans son now. And it's a kind of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Daniel, I'm just putting some of this stuff on the table, but it's some kind of a suicidal thing going on, and they even sacrifice their own children, right?
Something interesting actually happened this week. Malcolm Gladwell, the name might not mean a lot to some people, but he's a very famous liberal public intellectual, the guy with the tipping point. He's very well known, and he came out in an interview and he said that he was on this panel about transgender athletes, which means men competing against women while pretending to be women. And he was on that panel and he did not dare to actually say that obviously, this is men competing against women. And now he says, no, he's actually kind of willing to say it now because there's a permission structure for saying it after the election. And he's kind of ashamed to have not said it at the time. And he said, people in the audience really were applauding the transgender stuff, but he says that he thinks 90% of the audience actually did not believe it. There was a very vocal 5% that believed it and was very aggressively pushing it. Now, what's interesting is this guy could have, let's say he blew it off. Let's say he had actually come out and done what J.K. Rowling did and said, no, men can't be women. And what would have happened to him? Well, let's say he would have never gotten another book deal again, but pretty sure this guy's a millionaire. Does he really need the book deals? Stephen King was a guy who I'm pretty sure is probably a billionaire by now. When he was intimidated into taking back a statement that a writer can write anybody from any race or ethnic group, what did they have over Stephen King? Stephen King, again, is at that point is incredibly rich. He's probably in his 80s. What can they really do to him? And yet you see over and over again, these famous, these powerful people, these cultural figures are intimidated. They back down because they're still sheep. And there's this herd mentality. And looking back, some of these people, it's like the Soviet Union under Stalin. They look back, they can't understand why they were doing it. It's like Mao's Cultural Revolution, where all the kids were there and they were beating the principal to death. And now looking back, they can't understand why they did it. So this is really what the left does. It turns people into these mobs. It creates this herd mentality. It takes away their reason, their sense of right and wrong. It dehumanizes them. And then afterward, they can't really understand what they were doing. It's like COVID. People are masking 2-year-olds. Now, there are some people still trying to do it now. And everybody was full of hate for anybody who broke any of these regulations and actually left the house. And now, a few years later, they look back and they can't understand why they were doing it. And they just kind of go into denial. So the left does this over and over again. Its goal ultimately, and this is something out of Orwell's 1984, is to get you to say 2 plus 2 is 5. If they can get you to completely violate what you know is true, to repeat back whatever lie they tell you, they own your soul. And so many people are willing to do this. They're willing to say 2 plus 2 is 5. And then they won't just say 2 plus 2 is 5. They will scream at you, 2 plus 2 is 5. How dare you? You are a phobe of some kind if you don't agree that 2 plus 2 is 5. And then they're looking back, they go, well, we kind of knew that 2 plus 2 is 4. We don't really understand why we did it. And this is a madness. It's a madness that is absolutely contagious. It runs through social groups, and people are not as immune to it as they might think. And once the madness breaks, the fever breaks, people don't understand what came over them. You look back at these Hitler rallies, Hitler is screaming and everybody there is screaming. And a lot of those people later on didn't understand why they were doing it. And it's happening to us too.
Speaking of that, I was a waiter in my young years, and there was this one cook, and he was just a fascinating guy. And he approached me one time, and he says, Jamie, if Hitler came into your apartment, just you and him in a room, and he start practicing his speech in front of you, the normal average person, after listening for 15, 20 minutes, might go, yo, bro, like, you might want to maybe go get some help or go see a psychiatrist or something, But if it's done in front of a crowd, it's different. And we've got some experts that have written on crowds. And so that's another thing right there. But I was going to say, I see a demonic possession at play here. I've read the testimonies of many communists, and there are some communists that have said, former communists that said, when I was a communist, when I was speaking, it wasn't me talking. And it's very interesting. Sometimes you just look, I know some people. I know some people in my own life. And I know it's not them that's speaking. I'll just leave it at that. It's something else is going on there. And Annie, what a brilliant psychologist and sociologist she is. Because even when she talks about Ilhan Omar and her body language and how she speaks, and Annie, you just said that you can tell there's something wrong there. When you can just see a genuine person, and I'll say that about the both of you. When Daniel is speaking and Annie, when you're speaking, you can just see a lot of integrity, and you can see a human being just speaking from their heart. But when Annie says, when you look at Ilhan speaking, something is off. And Annie, I just don't want to only refer to you and leave you out of the conversation. So much has been said. Let me hand it over to you.
I appreciate that. I want to go back to a discussion a little earlier about UK, and I personally have thought about Europe, a lot of places in US, but mainly Europe, and you ask yourself why. Because I get it, corruption in government, that's understandable. But you see people have allowed it, people still deny it, people still look the other way. And let me plug your other book that when I read personally, my code that I gave it was, as an ex-Muslim, there were things for me to learn from this book. And that is your jihadist psychopath. You answered my question in that book. The lies and the manipulation and the victim card seems to be working so flawlessly, especially in Europe, and of course in many places in America, where average people are believing the lies and the fake olive branch offered to them by Islamic scholars and imams and a lot of Muslim neighbors. So I just wanted to add this to the UK discussion when you were talking about it, which is very concerning, because another thing, that this is just a figure of speech before anyone gets upset, but another piece I wrote was, imagine the world without Israel. I created the scenario of, okay, fine, Israel is the problem. Imagine Israel wasn't there. You know what is the first thing that's going to happen? Hamas and Hezbollah are going to be centralizing their camps in Europe. And Europe is going to be conquered in 5 minutes. The reason Israel is still standing is because Israel doesn't lie to itself, because they know what they're fighting. Europe has forgotten the real enemy, and they will be conquered faster.
Annie, are you saying that being in support of Israel might actually be America first?
No, what I'm saying is being in support of America, being in support of Israel as humanity first.
No, absolutely. I just mean that people say, oh, come on, America first, forget about Israel. No, 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 no. Supporting Israel means we're defending the United States.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. On a report a few days ago, I actually said a lot of people are accusing, which I should bring this up. I want to say I am not an Israeli, I'm not a Jew, but I am so proud of Jews in Israel for their recent development where they launched their newest spy. I forgot the term for it. Part of me drawing a blank into the orbit. When a satellite, when the satellite is able to spot and capture of image of a subject as small as 50 centimeters day or night, and people are all angry that, look, you see, Israel is behind all this spying and all privacy. I'm like, you do realize this is extra layer of protection for America because we have common enemies. When you look at the history of CIA and Mossad collaborations, majority of the successful neutralization of Islamic jihadists out there was Mossad giving information to America. Without Mossad's collaboration with CIA or FBI or any other department in the USA, we are blind.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. Defending, supporting, and standing by Israel, including the government that we don't agree with 100%, it is still America first.
Thank you, Annie. Daniel, I apologize. Annie and I invite guests on the show, and then her and I do all the talking. So it's not.
With that, if Annie could just talk in my place, that would be great.
Hey, I feel like that all the time. Well, she makes me look smart, thank God. When she talks, then I just pretend that's me talking. But Daniel, go ahead. What do you think about everything?
Well, I have to say, since we're talking to Annie, within America, within the entire world, within Israel for that matter, there are divisions between those who realize that Islam is a global threat, that it's a threat to all of us, and those who just want to pretend it's a conflict over there. It has nothing to do with us. And there's within Israel, there are those on the left and there are those who are more on the right who get it. And the division within Israel is actually also partly a division between Jews from Europe. A lot of the European Jews, call them Ashkenazis, really do not get it. They think that peace can be made with Islam. The reason there is a conservative government, a government that's for taking out terrorists in Israel, is because of the Middle Eastern Jews. Middle Eastern Jews, Jews from the Muslim world, who are refugees from places like Egypt and Iraq, and yes, Iran, actually form a demographic majority, and they've actually elected conservative governments, ones that are serious about fighting Islam, because they're the ones who get it. And Annie is, again, somebody who gets it. There are people who have come out of the Muslim world in America who get it. And those are the people like Annie we should really be listening to. Because the people who are pretending that what's going on in Israel, in the Middle East, and throughout the Muslim world, and India has nothing to do with us, are just refusing to deal with history. There's over 1,000 years of Islamic wars, jihads, genocides against the rest of the world. The tenets of Islam are pretty clear. Their mission, in short, is to conquer the world and make it submit to Islamic law. And that includes us, which means, yes, Israel is one of the tips of the spear in this fight, and we should be supporting every country that is fighting against Islamic jihad, whether it's Israel, whether it's India, whether it's any country, any place in the world. Whatever differences we have with those countries, we all have one giant global civilizational threat, a threat that if it actually succeeds, will eliminate the Christian world. And that is something that is we have really still not woken up to, and until we wake up to it, we are still in danger of being destroyed. And I mean destroyed not just in a war, but having our culture, our civilization entirely wiped out, as much as the Byzantine Empire, as much as what once was Byzantium was completely wiped out.
Well, thank you for the compliment, both of you. And let me take what you just said, Daniel, and go to the second part of the discussion you had. And I just want to say this to our audience. Most of our audience are very well educated, walking faith. But I just want to say this. Yes, in the Torah, in the Bible, we know dark days are ahead. We know what is going to happen at the end. However, what we don't know is when. So when you sit on your couch and you wait for it to happen, you're not doing your job. You keep fighting the evil. You do not collaborate, cooperate, or stay silent towards evil because we know what's coming. We don't know when it's coming. So until it arrives, it is our duty to continue exposing evil, to continue opposing evil, and to continue stopping evil. That's what I wanted to add to that discussion.
Amen. Daniel, everybody should go to frontpagemag.com. Everybody should go to The Point. Everybody should read your book. Tell very quickly our audience about your book and why everybody should buy it.
This is Domestic Enemies. It tells the story of the American left from the very beginning, how they conspired against America, against the Constitution, against the founding of this republic, and how the founding fathers, including George Washington, fought against them. It's an incredible story, one you've probably never heard of before.
Fantastic. Annie, thank you so much. Daniel, thank you for joining the Glazov Gang this evening. Everybody can also find you on X, correct?
They can indeed, while there's still free speech.
Absolutely. Anywhere else you'd like to tell them?
Well, I've got my own site, danielgreenfield.org, and of course, frontpagemag.com, under the brilliant editorship of, who is that again? Oh, Jamie Glazov.
Thank you so much. Daniel, you are a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you for being on the front lines, fighting for America and for freedom and for persecuted people throughout the world, and they are always on our mind, and we want to protect them and liberate them. Daniel, thank you for joining us tonight, and God bless you, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Glazov Gang this evening. Good night.